Hello. Funny how life works. One minute you're a happily married man planning a vacation, and the next, you're watching your wife plan her own vacation, on top of some guy named Evan. If you ever think, at least my wife would never do that to me, let me save you some time. She probably already has, you're just not paying attention. People always say that when you find out your spouse is cheating, you go through 5 stages of grief. That's a lie. There are only 3 real stages: denial, rage, and revenge. I'd like to say I was one of those guys who had no clue, who was blissfully ignorant until the truth came crashing down. But in reality, the signs had been there for months. I just chose to ignore them. Jenna and I had been married for 7 years. Long enough to build a life, long enough to fall into routine, and, apparently, long enough for her to get bored and start screwing someone else. She was always the type who needed excitement. When we first met, she had this spark about her, always chasing the next adventure, the next thrill. I used to think it was one of the things I loved about her. But looking back, maybe I should have seen it for what it was, a warning sign. The first red flag was small. A little too much time spent on her phone, a little too much perfume on days when she was supposedly just running errands. But it was easy to explain away. "Oh, I'm just talking to Melissa," she'd say. Or, "I ran into an old friend. We grabbed coffee." And like an idiot, I believed her. Then came the late nights. The sudden work obligations that she never used to have. The weekends where she'd say she was going out with her girlfriends, but would come home with makeup smudged in ways that didn't match the girls' night aesthetic. But the real gut punch? That came when she accidentally left her phone unlocked on our kitchen counter one evening. I wasn't even looking for anything, just going to check the time. But there it was. A text from Evan. "God, I can't stop thinking about last night." A simple sentence. An innocent phrase. If it weren't for the firestorm of images, it immediately burned into my brain. My hands went cold. My stomach twisted. But I didn't react. Not yet. Instead, I did what any rational man would do. I scrolled. I scrolled through months of messages, each one a dagger straight to the gut. I saw her calling him baby. I saw them reminiscing about that time in the hotel. I saw plans for their next meetup, a romantic weekend getaway, booked for a weekend I had already taken off to surprise her with a road trip. The irony was almost poetic. I closed her phone and set it back on the counter. I sat down, stared at the wall for a good 15 minutes, and tried to process what the hell I had just seen. There are moments in life that change you instantly. This was one of them. The man I was before, naive, trusting, devoted, died in that kitchen. And what took his place? A man with a plan. Because, you see, most people, when they catch their spouse cheating, they go nuclear. They scream, they cry, they throw plates, maybe even burn some clothes on the lawn. That wasn't my style. I wasn't interested in giving Jenna and Evan the satisfaction of knowing they had broken me. No, I was going to break them. And to do that, I needed an ally. You see, Evan wasn't just some random stranger. He was married. Meet Laura, Evan's sweet, unsuspecting wife. And just like that, my masterpiece of revenge began. Funny how life works. One minute you're a happily married man planning a vacation, and the next, you're watching your wife plan her own vacation, on top of some guy named Evan. If you ever think, at least my wife would never do that to me, let me save you some time. She probably already has, you're just not paying attention. The night I found out Jenna was cheating on me, I didn't say a word. I sat across from her at the dinner table, watching as she absent-mindedly scrolled through her phone, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Probably texting him. I wondered what excuse she'd feed me if I asked who she was talking to. Melissa again? Work drama? I chewed my food slowly, studying her like she was some kind of specimen under a microscope. It was strange. Up until that day, I thought I knew every little thing about her. Her habits, her tells, the way she fiddled with her necklace when she was nervous. But now, sitting across from her, I realized I was looking at a stranger. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to grab her phone and shove it in her face, make her admit everything right then and there. But that would be too easy. No, Jenna didn't deserve easy. She deserved calculated. So I played my part. I smiled when she smiled. I nodded when she talked about her day. I even kissed her goodnight, feeling nothing but cold disgust as I did it. I needed time to gather information, time to build my plan. The next morning, I took the day off work, told Jenna I had meetings, kissed her goodbye as she left for her yoga class, which, let's be honest, was probably just her getting her cardio in Evan's bed, and sat down with my laptop. Finding Laura wasn't hard. Cheaters are sloppy. Evan's last name was in Jenna's texts, buried in old messages about how she just adored his sense of humor. A quick Facebook search later, and there he was, his profile public, his life on display like an open book. And there she was, Laura Michaels. She was pretty. The kind of woman who radiated warmth, who looked like she made fresh coffee every morning and packed cute little lunches for her husband before he went off to cheat on her. Her Facebook was filled with happy couple pictures, vacations, anniversary posts, selfies where Evan grinned like the faithful husband he pretended to be. God, the irony. Laura and Evan had been married for 10 years. No kids. A golden retriever named Charlie. A house with a white picket fence. And, just like me, she had no clue. I clicked through her posts, looking for something, an opening. Then I saw it. A fundraiser she was organizing. Something for a local animal shelter. Bingo. I wasn't about to slide into Laura's DMs with, "Hey, your husband is sleeping with my wife. Do you want to be friends?" No, that would ruin everything. Instead, I played the long game. I donated to the fundraiser using my real name, then left a comment. "Love what you're doing. I actually run a small nonprofit on the side for rescue dogs. Would love to help out sometime." Half of that was a lie. I didn't run anything, but it sounded believable. Laura replied within an hour, thanking me for my generosity. I kept it light, casual. Replied, made small talk. Nothing weird, nothing suspicious. And then, a few days later, I got a message from her. "Hey Ryan, I was wondering if you'd like to come by the shelter this weekend? We could really use some extra hands." I stared at the message for a long time, grinning like a lunatic. Because Laura? She had no idea what she had just invited into her life. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I prefer mine served slow, seasoned with patience, marinated in deception, and plated up when the target least expects it. I wasn't going to scream, cry, or throw my wife's belongings onto the front lawn like some kind of daytime soap opera meltdown. That would make me look weak. No, I wanted my revenge to be elegant, a masterpiece. And it all started with a simple invitation from the woman whose life was about to unravel just like mine had. The animal shelter was a small, brick building nestled between a grocery store and a laundromat. It had that unmistakable smell, disinfectant barely covering the scent of wet fur and desperation. As soon as I walked in, I saw her. Laura was standing near the front desk, her hair pulled into a messy ponytail, wearing a t-shirt with the shelter's logo. She looked so normal, like the kind of woman who baked cookies for neighborhood kids and made handmade birthday cards for her husband, the same husband who was currently nailing my wife behind her back. She smiled warmly when she saw me, the kind of smile that people give when they have no idea the world is about to collapse beneath them. "Ryan, you actually came." She sounded genuinely surprised, like people didn't usually follow through when they said they wanted to help. That stung a little. Maybe if the roles were reversed, I would have thought Jenna was the kind of person who deserved someone like Laura, loyal, caring, completely oblivious. I played my part perfectly, shook her hand with just the right amount of enthusiasm, asked all the right questions about the shelter, pretended to be a good guy. I even let a few puppies chew on my shoelaces while she explained the adoption process. People love a man who's good with dogs. And that's what I needed, for Laura to like me. Because if she liked me, she'd trust me. And if she trusted me, she'd talk. The first day, I kept it simple, listened more than I spoke, nodded at the right moments, laughed when she told me about some ridiculous adoption applicant who tried to convince them that a husky would be fine in a studio apartment. I was careful, so careful. No sudden moves, no weird questions, nothing that would make her suspect I had any ulterior motive. I was just Ryan, the nice guy who wanted to help. By the second weekend, she was telling me about her personal life. She didn't do it in a dramatic, oversharing kind of way. It was subtle, woven into casual conversation. "Evan was supposed to help out today, but work's been so busy for him lately. Her voice had a tinge of disappointment, but she covered it with a quick smile. I wanted to tell her. Right then, I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake her, tell her that her perfect husband wasn't at work. He was probably balls deep in my wife at some cheap motel. But that wasn't part of the plan. Instead, I tilted my head slightly, as if processing her words, and asked, "What does he do again?" "Oh, he's in consulting," she said, waving a hand. "Corporate stuff. I don't even understand half of it. Consulting. Right. A convenient job title that meant absolutely nothing. He's been traveling more, huh?" I asked, pretending to sound just casually interested. "Yeah," she sighed. "A lot more than he used to." She was giving me the breadcrumbs. All I had to do was keep following them. By the fourth week, she was comfortable with me. I had become her friend. She even sent me a picture of one of the shelter dogs wearing a ridiculous sweater, captioned, "He misses you." I could tell she wasn't the kind of person who made new friends easily. She was too invested in one person. A person who didn't deserve her. And that's when I knew it was time to start planting the seeds of doubt. Not in an obvious way. No, that would ruin everything. Instead, I played it smart. Asked innocent questions. Acted like I didn't notice the way her face tensed when I mentioned Evan's name. "You guys must have a strong marriage," I said one afternoon, when we were cleaning out one of the kennels. "With him traveling so much, I mean. Some couples can't handle that kind of distance." It was a test. A small one. She hesitated. It was brief, but it was there. "Yeah," she said too quickly. "We make it work." I just smiled and nodded, like I believed her. That night, I checked Jenna's phone again while she was in the shower, just to see if things were still running smoothly on their end. They were. But what she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that the real game had just begun. By the time the 6th week rolled around, I had become a fixture in Laura's life. It was almost too easy. I wasn't just some casual volunteer at the shelter anymore. I was Ryan, the reliable guy. The one who always showed up, who listened when she vented about her long days, who knew exactly how she liked her coffee. Light roast, 2 sugars, just a splash of oat milk. I could tell she looked forward to our conversations, even if she didn't realize it yet. But more importantly, I was slowly becoming a shadow in her marriage. It wasn't about flirting or making a move. That would have been reckless and too obvious. No, what I wanted, what I needed, was to let the cracks in her relationship widen on their own. I had already confirmed that Evan was still very much in the business of sneaking around with my wife. That meant he wasn't paying attention to what was happening at home. And while he was off playing his little game, I was learning everything. Laura had a habit of brushing her hair behind her ear when she was about to say something she wasn't sure she should say. She had a telltale pause before she laughed, like she was making sure a joke was actually funny before she committed to it. She never interrupted people when they spoke, but sometimes she'd nod a little too much, as if overcompensating for thoughts she wasn't voicing. These were small details, but small details made all the difference. I knew the way she spoke about Evan was starting to shift. In the beginning, she was upbeat, doting, excusing his absences with casual smiles. "Oh, he's just so busy lately. He really loves his work. He's doing this for us." But by week 6, her tone was different. The words hadn't changed, but the energy behind them had. She was still smiling when she spoke about him, but it was tighter now, like someone who had rehearsed their excuses for so long that they didn't even sound real to themselves anymore. So I pushed, gently. One afternoon, we were stacking bags of dog food in the shelter's supply room. She was talking about how exhausted she'd been, how Evan had missed yet another dinner, how she was starting to feel like she was just a background character in his life. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. I just sighed and muttered, "That must be tough." She looked at me then, not in the way she usually did, not like a friend, not like someone making polite conversation. It was different. It was the look of someone who suddenly realized they weren't alone and feeling like a fool. She exhaled slowly. "Yeah, it is." And that was when I knew I had her. Not in a romantic way. This wasn't about seduction. This was about solidarity. About making sure that when the time came, when the house of lies came crumbling down, she wouldn't fight it. I played the long game. Planted seeds, watered them, let them grow. Must be hard, being married to someone who's always gone. Bet you sometimes feel like you're living separate lives. You ever wonder what he's really doing when he says he's working late? At first, she brushed it off, but little by little, her responses changed. The hesitation before she answered grew longer. The way she looked at her phone when Evan texted wasn't fond anymore. It was calculated. She was reading between the lines now, seeing the patterns I had already mapped out. And then, the moment I had been waiting for finally happened. One evening, after another long shift at the shelter, I walked her to her car like always. She had her keys in her hand, but she wasn't getting in yet. Instead, she was staring at the ground, chewing her bottom lip. Finally, she sighed. "Ryan, can I ask you something?" I kept my face neutral. "Of course." She hesitated, then glanced up at me. Have you ever had a moment where you realized that maybe you don't know someone as well as you thought you did? I met her gaze, held it, then I nodded. "Yeah, I have." She inhaled sharply, like she had just admitted something she wasn't supposed to say out loud. "I don't know why I'm even thinking this," she muttered, shaking her head. "I feel crazy. It's just, Evan's been so distant lately, and there are little things that don't add up. I don't want to be that paranoid wife, but—" I cut her off before she could second-guess herself. "Maybe it's not paranoia," I said, my voice quiet but deliberate. She looked at me for a long time, searching my expression for something. Permission, validation, maybe even the truth she didn't want to admit to herself. And then she did something unexpected. She exhaled, forced a laugh, and shook her head. "God, listen to me. I sound ridiculous. Forget I said anything?" But she knew, and I knew she knew. I just smiled. "No worries, Laura. See you tomorrow." As she drove away, I felt it in my gut. The dominoes were lined up, and the next time I pushed, they were all going to fall. I had spent weeks planting seeds of doubt in Laura's mind, watching them grow like cracks in glass. By now, she was already questioning everything about her marriage. She wasn't stupid, just blind, like I had been. But the thing about blind people is that once they start to see, they can't unsee. And now, it was time for the grand reveal. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted art. I wanted something that would haunt them forever, something that would make their affair seem like the worst decision of their lives. This wasn't going to be a screaming match or a dramatic breakup text. No, this would be surgical, the kind of devastation that doesn't hit all at once but unfolds layer by layer, like peeling the skin off a lie until all that's left is raw, exposed truth. The plan was simple, yet diabolically perfect. I started with invitations. Using Laura's phone, don't ask how I got access, let's just say trust is a dangerous thing. I sent a text to Evan, inviting him to a surprise date night at their favorite fancy restaurant. "I just want to do something special for you," the text read. Evan, the cheating bastard, replied with some heart emojis and "can't wait, babe." Then, I did the same with Jenna. Sent her a message from my phone, acting like the devoted, clueless husband I was pretending to be. "Hey babe, I made reservations for us tonight at this amazing new place. Just want to remind you how much I love you." She replied with a smiling face with hearts "can't wait." And I almost laughed at how easy this was. I had just set both of them up for the same date. But I wasn't done. Oh no, this was just the appetizer. I needed an audience. So, using a burner number, I sent out another set of invitations, this time to Laura. "Come to this restaurant tonight. You'll want to see this. ***, no sender name. No explanation. Just a nudge in the right direction." Then, just for good measure, I added one more guest to the party. Jenna's parents. I sent them a warm, heartfelt message from her phone. "Hey, Mom and Dad. Ryan and I have a huge announcement to make tonight. Come meet us at this restaurant. It's going to be life-changing. Love you." 2 hearts. By the time evening rolled around, all the pieces were in place. Now, it was time to watch the fireworks. I arrived early and took a seat at the bar, perfectly positioned to see the entire dining area. The restaurant was elegant, candlelit, the kind of place where people celebrate anniversaries or propose. How fitting. At exactly 7 p.m., Jenna arrived first. She looked perfect, of course, hairstyled, wearing a dress she usually only pulled out for big occasions. She scanned the room, expecting to see me. Instead, her eyes landed on Evan, who had just walked in. And then came Laura. She stepped inside hesitantly, probably half expecting a romantic setup, but instead, she froze the second she saw her husband sitting across from mine. The best part? They hadn't seen her yet. I watched, sipping my whiskey, as realization started to dawn. First, the confusion. Then, the panic. Jenna's smile wavered as she and Evan exchanged glances, silently asking the same question. "What the hell are you doing here?" Then, before they could react, Jenna's parents walked in, right on time. Jenna's mom was glowing with excitement, clutching her husband's arm. They were expecting a beautiful, heartfelt moment, maybe news about a baby, or a dream vacation we were finally taking. But instead, they got this. And that's when I stood up, walked over to the table, and said, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear, "Surprise. Looks like we're all on a double date." Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Jenna turned ghost white. Evan looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Laura? She just stared at her husband, like she was finally seeing him for the first time. But I wasn't finished. I pulled my phone out, opened a file, and pressed play. A recording of their texts. Every "I love you," every "last night was amazing," every disgusting, cheating, pathetic message blasted through the speakers of the restaurant. People gasped. Waiters stopped in their tracks. Jenna's parents? Horrified. Her mother clasped a hand over her mouth, looking at her daughter like she was someone she'd never met before. Evan tried to grab the phone. Too late. The damage was done. Jenna, bless her delusional heart, actually tried to defend herself. "Ryan, wait, this isn't." I cut her off. "Oh no, please. Explain to your parents how this is all a misunderstanding. Maybe tell Laura why you've been sleeping with her husband behind her back. I'm sure we'd all love to hear it." Laura's face was stone cold. She turned to Evan, voice razor sharp. "How long?" Evan stuttered like a damn idiot. "It wasn't serious." She threw her glass of wine right in his face. The restaurant erupted. Whispers. Gasps. A waiter actually clapped. And me? I just grabbed my jacket, took one last sip of my drink, and turned to Jenna. "Hope it was worth it, sweetheart." Then I walked out, and as I stepped outside, into the crisp night air, I heard the best sound in the world, Jenna's mother screaming at her. I never looked back. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt an odd sense of calm settle over me. The chaos behind me, the shocked whispers, the stunned silence, the absolute train wreck I had just orchestrated, was exactly what I wanted. I didn't need to stay inside that restaurant anymore. The show was over. But, of course, they weren't going to let me leave that easily. Ryan, wait." I sighed, slowing my steps just enough to let her catch up. Jenna's heels clicked rapidly against the pavement, her breathing uneven. "What the heck was that? Are you completely insane?" Her voice was a mix of anger and panic, like she was still scrambling to take control of a situation she had already lost. I turned around slowly, meeting her wide-eyed stare. Even under the dim streetlights, I could see the cracks forming in her perfect mask. Her hands were clenched, her makeup slightly smudged from stress. This was not the confident, self-assured woman who had spent months sneaking around behind my back. No, this was someone who had just watched everything she built crumble in seconds. I tilted my head slightly, pretending to think. "Oh, you mean exposing your little secret in front of your parents? That?" I shrugged. "Yeah, I'd say that went pretty well." Jenna's face turned red. "You didn't have to do it like that. You." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Didn't have to?" "Oh, Jenna." I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice. "Do you think I was just going to sit back and let you walk all over me? Let you cheat, lie, and then pretend like you're some innocent victim?" I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. Actions have consequences. You just got yours." She opened her mouth, probably to argue, but before she could speak, the restaurant doors burst open, and here came Evan, still wiping his shirt, looking like a man who had just walked out of a disaster zone. Laura was right behind him, arms crossed, her face unreadable. Evan took a deep breath. "Ryan, listen, I know you're mad, but..." I turned toward him, my expression deadpan. Evan. He stopped. I stepped forward, calm, composed. If you say one more word, I swear you'll regret it. I didn't have to yell. I didn't have to threaten. But something in my tone made him hesitate. Because deep down, he knew. He knew that after everything he had done, after the sheer level of disrespect he had shown, he had no right to stand here and try to make excuses. Instead, Laura spoke. How long? Her voice was quiet, but the weight behind it was enough to make everyone freeze. Jenna blinked. What? Laura's gaze sharpened. How long have you been seeing my husband? Jenna swallowed. Her hands twitched like she was trying to find an answer that wouldn't make her look even worse. But Laura wasn't in the mood for hesitation. I said, how long? Jenna's lips parted, but no words came out. Finally, in barely a whisper, she admitted, almost a year. Laura closed her eyes for a brief second, like she was absorbing the impact. Then, with zero warning, she lifted her glass and threw the rest of her drink right at Evan. The sound of liquid hitting fabric. The small gasp from a bystander. The absolute shock on Evan's face. It was perfect. Jenna took a step back, like she thought she might be next. I almost hoped she would be. Laura took a slow breath. That, she said, her voice steady, was for every time I thought I was imagining things. Every time I trusted you. Every time I told myself you'd never do something like this. She turned back to Jenna. And you? You're pathetic. Jenna's face twisted. Laura, please. No, Laura snapped. You don't get to talk. You don't get to explain. I hope it was worth it, because whatever little friendship you thought we had, gone. Jenna flinched, but before she could even react, I delivered the final blow. By the way, I said casually, pulling my phone from my pocket, your parents? Yeah, they're done with you. Jenna's face paled. You're lying. I smirked. Am I? Right on cue, her phone buzzed. I watched her hands shake as she pulled it out, her eyes scanning the screen. And I knew exactly what she was reading. A single message from her mom. Do not contact us again. Jenna's breath hitched. I saw it in real time. The exact second she realized she had truly lost everything. She looked up at me, voice barely above a whisper. Ryan, please. I didn't let her finish. I exhaled slowly, adjusting my jacket. Then I turned away, stepping back onto the sidewalk. Enjoy your new life, Jenna. I called over my shoulder. Oh, wait, you don't have one anymore. I didn't run. I didn't rush. I walked away slowly, savoring every last second of the destruction I had just left behind. And as I disappeared down the street, I heard the best sound in the world, Jenna's mother's voice, yelling at her daughter. I smiled. I had already won. Bye-bye.